All right, you sick fucks. Welcome back to the deep dive.
Glad to be back.
Today, we're wading into that clusterfuck that is Russia's war on Ukraine.
Yeah.
But hold your horses.
Okay.
We ain't talking about tanks and trenches.
Yeah.
We're diving into how those vodka-swilling dipshits decided to play Godzilla with Ukraine's infrastructure.
Yeah, it's a real shit show. And honestly, it's been a core part of their strategy from the get-go.
So let's cut the crap. What were they targeting in those early days? Like before they went full-blown blackout bonanza?
Well, right from February 2022, they were already taking swings at information infrastructure.
Really?
Yeah, they even hit the Kiev TV tower like some kind of twisted PR stunt. Then it was all about disrupting fuel, depots, pipelines, anything that could screw with Ukraine's ability to keep their army moving.
Classic dick move. Cripple the communication, then cripple the fuel supply.
Yeah.
But when did they decide to go full-on apocalyptic on the power grid?
Things took a real dark turn after the Crimean Bridge went kablooey on October 8th, 2022.
Yeah, that was the one that really got Putin's panties in a twist. Mr. Big Dictator's precious bridge, his symbol of Russian power, and some brave bastards decided to poke a giant hole in it.
Precisely. Russia went full-on toddler tantrum and swore revenge. Then, on October 10th, they unleashed a shitstorm of 84 cruise missiles and 24 suicide drones on cities across Ukraine. That was the moment they shifted gears to systematically dismantling Ukraine's power grid.
So it was all downhill from there, huh?
Pretty much. They kept pounding the power grid throughout the fall, figuring they could freeze the Ukrainians into submission as winter set in.
Brutal.
By November, nearly half the country was plunged into darkness, with millions left without power.
Talk about a recipe for disaster. Imagine shivering your ass off in the dark while those Russian pricks are cozy in their heated palaces knocking back Stoli martinis. So was this just about fucking with Ukraine's ability to fight, or was there something more sinister at play?
It was a multi-pronged attack. Demoralizing the population was definitely part of the plan, hoping to pressure Zelensky into waving the white flag. But they also wanted to disrupt troop movements, logistics, supplies, anything that could give them a tactical edge.
So a mix of military strategy and straight-up psychological warfare, huh? But those Ukrainians, they're a stubborn bunch. Did Putin really think he could break their spirit by plunging them into darkness?
He severely underestimated their resilience, that's for sure. But the impact of these attacks was devastating, no question. Millions were without power during a brutal winter, the cost of repairs was astronomical, and the economy took a massive hit. It was a calculated move to cripple Ukraine for the long haul.
It's like kicking someone in the balls, then setting their house on fire for good measure. What the hell was the rest of the world doing while all this was going down? Surely somebody called bullshit on this whole operation.
Oh, yeah. There was plenty of condemnation from the international community. Everyone except Russia and its few remaining ass-kissers called out these attacks for what they were.
Which is
barbaric and indiscriminate acts of aggression.
Well, at least someone was paying attention. But those Russians, they just can't help but double down on their stupid shit, can they? Didn't they pull some especially boneheaded move in May 2023?
You're talking about the whole Kinzhal fiasco.
Bingo. Those hypersonic missiles they were bragging about like some middle schooler with a new toy? They finally decided to use them, and it backfired spectacularly.
It was a pathetic attempt at a power play trying to intimidate Ukraine and flex their military muscle. They launched a volley of those Kinzhals at Kyiv, but Ukraine claims they shot them all down.
And to add insult to injury, this happened just as a delegation of African leaders was visiting Kyiv to talk peace.
Oh, wow.
Talk about terrible timing. Did Putin seriously think that raining down hypersonic missiles would make him look like a reasonable negotiator?
It certainly didn't help his case, but it also highlighted the tenacity of the Ukrainians. Despite these relentless attacks, they've managed to adapt, fight back, and even maintain a sense of humor through it all.
Yes,
and thankfully, the international community has stepped up to provide support, both military and humanitarian.
So in a twisted way, Putin's strategy backfired. He wanted to break them, but he ended up making them even stronger and more united.
Exactly. It's a classic case of underestimating your opponent's willpower. The Ukrainians have proven time and again that they're not going down without a fight, and they're not going to let some tin pot dictator dictate their future.
So far, we've covered the early strikes, the Crimean Bridge tantrum, the relentless assault on the power grid. But things got even more fucked up, didn't they?
You're talking about the Kakhovka Dam. Now, that was a whole different level of fucked up.
Yeah, that wasn't just an attack on infrastructure. It was a full-blown humanitarian and ecological disaster.
It was a new low even for Russia. Blowing up the dam caused massive flooding, displaced thousands, and risked a meltdown at the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant. And the real kicker, the dam was under their control when it went boom. Those morons blew up their own damn dam.
You're kidding.
I wish I was.
Wait, are you serious?
The evidence certainly points that way. And it wasn't the only dam they targeted. They also hit smaller dams in Donetsk Oblast trying to slow the Ukrainian counteroffensive. Talk about scorched earth tactics.
Well, that's some next-level evil genius right there.
Hmm.
So where do things stand now after all this destruction? What's the latest on Russia's infrastructure war?
Well, by mid-2024, Ukraine was down to about a third of its pre-war electricity generating capacity.
Oof.
They've done an amazing job restoring power after each attack, but Russia's getting sneakier and more efficient at targeting those repairs.
So basically.
They're adapting their tactics, using new weapons, and just generally being dicks about the whole thing.
Sounds like things are getting pretty hairy for Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
And with winter coming, they're facing a whole new level of vulnerability.
The situation is incredibly fragile. Millions of Ukrainians are bracing for another winter of potential blackouts and freezing temperatures. And the economic impact is a huge concern, too. The constant need for repairs is draining Ukraine's resources. It's a bleak picture, for sure.
Well, that's enough doom and gloom for one part. We need to refill our drinks and process all this fucked upness. But don't go anywhere, you degenerates. In Part 2, we'll delve deeper into the specific tactics Russia has used in this campaign, from their cruise missile fetish to those creepy-ass kamikaze drones. We'll be right back.
All right, you degenerates, welcome back to the deep dive. We just laid out the timeline of Russia's attack on Ukraine's infrastructure. Now let's get into the nuts and bolts of how they've been waging this war on the everyday shit that keeps a country running.
Yeah, let's talk about the toys these assholes have been using to fuck shit up. What's in their arsenal of destruction?
Well, they've got a pretty diverse collection of crap. They've used everything from old-school cruise missiles to those Iranian kamikaze drones that look like flying Roombas. And of course, they had to show off those hypersonic missiles they've been bragging about.
So let's break it down one toy at a time. First up, those cruise missiles. What kind of damage can those bad boys do?
Cruise missiles are basically flying bombs that can travel long distances and hit targets with decent accuracy. Russia has a whole variety of them. Caliber, KH-101, KH-555. They've launched these missiles from ships in the Black Sea bombers in Russian airspace, even from submarines.
And I'm guessing these things pack a serious punch, right?
Oh, absolutely. We're talking massive explosions that can take out entire power plants or cripple critical infrastructure like bridges and railway lines. And here's the kicker. They don't always hit their intended targets. Sometimes they go astray, smashing into residential buildings or other civilian structures.
Yeah, like that apartment building in Dnipro that got obliterated in January 2023. Those bastards claimed it was an accident, but it's hard to believe they weren't deliberately targeting civilians at that point.
It was a blatant war crime, plain and simple, and just one example of the horrific human cost of these attacks.
Okay, so cruise missiles are definitely bad news. But what about those kamikaze drones? Are those things as deadly as they sound?
They might not have the raw power of cruise missiles, but they can still do a lot of damage. Imagine a cheap, disposable drone packed with explosives programmed to fly into a target and detonate. It's like a robot suicide bomber.
Sounds terrifying. So how effective have these flying bombs been?
They've definitely caused damage, but Ukraine has gotten pretty good at swatting them out of the sky. They've used everything from anti-aircraft missiles to small arms fire to take them down.
It's like a high-stakes game of whack-a-mole, except the moles are explosive drones trying to blow up your power grid. So where do those fancy hypersonic missiles fit into all of this? The Kinzhals, Russia's shiny new toys they couldn't wait to use.
The Kinzhals travel at least 5 times the speed of sound, making them incredibly difficult to intercept. And they can maneuver in flight, making them even harder to track. Imagine a super fast, super agile guided missile that can dodge your defenses and hit you before you even know what's happening.
Or that's just fucking fantastic.
Yeah.
But hey, at least Ukraine managed to shoot down all those Kinzhals that Russia fired at Kyiv in May 2023, right?
That's what Ukraine claims, and there's some evidence to support it. But even if it's true, it was just one incident. The threat of hypersonic weapons is still very real, and Russia is likely to keep developing and deploying them.
So we've got cruise missiles, kamikaze drones, hypersonic weapons. What else have those Russian assholes been using to attack Ukraine's infrastructure? Don't tell me they've resorted to throwing rocks.
They've actually been using S-300 missiles, originally designed for air defense, but they've repurposed them to strike ground targets in Ukraine. They've caused a lot of damage, especially to civilian areas.
So they're basically taking old air defense missiles and using them to terrorize Ukrainian cities. Talk about resourceful asshole.
It shows their desperation in a way. They're running low on precision-guided munitions, so they're resorting to using whatever they can get their hands on.
Well, this is a pretty bleak picture you're painting here. They're hitting Ukraine with everything but the kitchen sink. What's the international community doing to stop this madness?
That's what we'll be exploring in part 3 of this deep dive. We'll look at the international response to these attacks, the challenges of providing Ukraine with effective air defenses, and the potential for holding Russia accountable for its war crimes.
Sounds like a plan. All right, folks, we're taking a quick break to refill our drinks and ponder the depths of Russia's depravity. Be right back. All right, you magnificent bastards, welcome back for the final round of this deep dive. We've covered the timeline of Russia's infrastructure attacks, the weapons they're using, like it's a goddamn clearance sale at the Kremlin Armory. Now, the big question, what the hell can anyone do to stop these clowns?
Well, there's been a lot of finger wagging and stern talking from the international community, but turning those words into action, that's a whole other story.
You bet.
Countries have been sending Ukraine military and humanitarian aid, but it's like trying to bail out a sinking ship with a teacup.
So it's a constant struggle just to keep up with the sheer scale of destruction those Russian asshats are dishing out. It's like they're playing a real-life game of SimCity, but their only goal is to flatten everything.
Exactly. One of the biggest challenges is getting Ukraine the air defenses they need. We're talking about a massive country with a huge border and limited resources. It's a logistical nightmare trying to protect every power plant, bridge, and piece of critical infrastructure.
Especially when Russia keeps throwing new shit at them. Cruise missiles, drones, those hypersonic Kinzhal doohickeys. It's like they're trying to overwhelm Ukraine's defenses with sheer volume and variety.
You got it. And even the most high-tech air defense systems have their limits. There's always a chance that some missiles will slip through.
So is this a hopeless situation? Is there anything that can actually be done to protect Ukraine from this onslaught?
It's not hopeless, but it's going to take a multi-pronged approach. First and foremost, Ukraine needs more and better air defense systems, and they need them yesterday. They've gotten some help from allies like those Patriot systems from the U.S., but they need a hell of a lot more.
So step one, give the Ukrainians more firepower to blast those Russian missiles out of the sky. What else is on the to-do list?
Step 2 is intelligence sharing. Ukraine needs real-time intel on when and where Russia is planning to launch its attacks. That way, they can anticipate the moves and prepare their defenses accordingly. It's like playing chess, but with much higher stakes.
Basically, they need to be one step ahead of those Russian pricks and their missile fetish.
Right. They also need help rebuilding and repairing damaged infrastructure. The faster they can get things back up and running, the less impact Russia's attacks will have.
So it's not just about playing defense, it's about being resilient. Being able to bounce back no matter how much shit Russia throws at them.
Precisely. And then there's the question of accountability. Russia needs to be held responsible for its war crimes, including these deliberate attacks on civilian infrastructure.
Yeah, those bastards can't just go around terrorizing a whole country and get away with it.
Right.
What are the options for making them pay for their actions?
Well, there's the International Criminal Court, which has already issued arrest warrants for several Russian officials, including Putin himself. But getting those warrants enforced, that's a whole other can of worms.
Yeah, good luck dragging Putin to The Hague. He's probably too busy hiding in his bunker, polishing his nuclear launch codes, and practicing his evil laugh.
Then there are economic sanctions, which have been imposed by a lot of countries. But sanctions take time to have a real impact, and Russia's found ways to wiggle around them.
So sanctions are a slow burn, and Russia seems to have built up a tolerance to them. What else can be done?
Individual countries can pursue legal action against Russia for the damages caused by these attacks. There's also a growing push to seize Russian assets abroad and use them to fund Ukraine's reconstruction. Basically, take the money from those oligarchs' yachts and mansions and put it towards rebuilding what Russia destroyed.
Hit them where it hurts in their wallets. Sounds like poetic justice to me.
It's a complex issue with no easy solutions. But the key is to keep the pressure on hold Russia accountable and support Ukraine however we can.
All right, so after diving deep into this mess, where does that leave us? What's the takeaway for our listeners?
The situation is dire, no doubt about it, but there's still hope. The Ukrainian people are incredibly resilient and determined, and they have the backing of much of the world. This war is far from over, but one thing is clear, the stakes couldn't be higher. So stay informed, stay engaged, and we'll catch you magnificent bastards on the next deep dive. In this case,